Story 1. I don't know why I picked it up. I wasn't really looking for anything special that day, just browsing through the thrift store. I was hoping to find some quirky props for my next blog post. But then, something caught my eye. An old cookbook, dusty and tattered, tucked behind a stack of old magazines. The cover was black leather, peeling at the edges. There was no title, just a strange symbol embossed in gold. A crescent moon, a pentagram, and what looked like a claw wrapped around a fork. I should have left it. Something about it felt off, but instead I pulled it out, blew off the dust, and laughed. "Witch's cookbook," I muttered, half amused. It was exactly the kind of strange thing I could use for my blog. I was thinking of making a post like, "Flavors from a dead witch's palate." Perfect clickbait, right? I flipped through the pages, scanning the weird recipes. One stood out, the Feast of Fortune. The description was simple enough, a dish for luck, love, and prosperity. That caught my attention. Who doesn't want good luck and love, right? It sounded like the perfect quirky recipe to share with my followers. I had a weird writing under. The price is paid in blood, and the price is taken in time, but I didn't take it too seriously, thinking it's another one of its quirky writings. The ingredients were strange, sure. Moon-chanted saffron, midnight honey, black salt from the deepest caves. But I figured I could make do with whatever I could find at the store. That night I gathered everything, set up my phone, and went live. I'd been wanting to do a cooking video anyway. "Hey guys, welcome back," I said, grinning into the camera. "Today we're cooking something special, the Feast of Fortune. Yep, that's right. A dish that's supposed to bring good luck, prosperity, maybe even some love. Who doesn't want that?" I heard a few laughs in the chat, so I knew my followers were in for the ride. I laid out the ingredients and got to work. The recipe was complicated, but I followed it step by step. I even did all the weird witchy stuff, muttering a chant as I stirred the pot. At first I laughed at how silly it felt, but the more I said the words, the more, I don't know, real it felt. The air around me seemed to grow heavier. The smell of the food was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It smelled incredible, magical even. When the dish was done, I took a bite. I said, a little surprised. "Okay, I'm not even gonna lie. This is amazing." It was rich, spicy, earthy, and sweet all at once. It wasn't like any stew I'd ever tasted. It was perfect. It tasted like something made just for me. After I ended the stream, my phone blew up with notifications. My followers were all over it. "OMG, I need this recipe," one comment said. "This looks amazing. Can't wait to try it." Another said, "The vibes are so strong in this video. You look different, like you're glowing." I thought it was just a compliment, but I couldn't shake the odd feeling that something was off. Still, I didn't think much of it. The recipe was blowing up. The next day, I posted it on my blog. The views skyrocketed, more likes and shares than anything I'd ever posted. I was getting a ton of comments from people saying how incredible it looked. Some people even said they could feel the energy through the video, like it was radiating magic. But then, the comments started to get strange. One person, with a bizarre username, wrote, "Sure the dead witch didn't help you cook?" I froze when I read that. I mean, what the hell? I laughed it off, but something about it gave me a chill. The weirdness didn't stop there. The next few days went by in a blur of excitement. My blog post went viral. I was getting all kinds of offers, brand deals, collaborations, and free products. My inbox was flooded with opportunities. I thought I had it all. I was on top of the world. But slowly, strange things started happening. One night I heard a knocking sound. It wasn't from the door. It was coming from inside my cabinets. Knock, knock, knock. At first I thought it was just the pipes, maybe something settling in the walls. But then it happened again and again. I opened the cabinets every time, but there was nothing there. I tried to ignore it. It was probably just my imagination, right? Then the scratching started. Faint at first, like something dragging nails across my cutting board. Then louder. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Every time I'd check, nothing would be there. I'd turn away and it'd start again. Scrape, scrape, scrape. One night I walked into the kitchen and stopped cold. She was there. A woman. No, not a woman. Something that wore the shape of one. Her skin was gray and withered like crumpled paper. Her eyes were hollow, just two endless pits of darkness that sucked in all the light around them. Her mouth stretched too wide, jagged teeth grinning in a way that sent ice down my spine. Her fingers were long and thin like branches, and her nails scratched slow, deliberate lines into my countertop. "You feasted," she rasped, her voice like leaves crumbling underfoot. Now it's my turn. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Every instinct in me screamed to run, but my feet were rooted in place. Her head tilted, her eyes narrowing like she could see every inch of my soul. "Did you think luck comes for free?" she hissed. "Did you think you'd taste fortune and pay nothing in return?" Her grin widened, splitting her face too far, skin cracking like old leather. I bolted. I don't even remember how I got out. I'd never moved so fast in my life. The door that wouldn't budge before now flew open with a crash. I stumbled down the stairs, half falling, gasping for air. Behind me, I heard her voice rising in a shriek that rattled my bones. It wasn't a scream, it was laughter. Her laughter chased me into the night. I didn't stop running until I was miles away, breath ragged, heart pounding like a drum. I checked into a cheap motel, locking every door and window. But I knew it wasn't over. The price wasn't paid. I escaped for now. But for how long? I'm in a motel. The lights are all on, every shadow sharp and watching. I can hear it, that scraping sound just beyond the door. Scrape, scrape, scrape. I remember what was written under the recipe now. The price is paid in blood, and the price is taken in time. But the price isn't paid yet. How long could I escape paying it? Story 2. I'm not proud of it. In fact, I'm ashamed. But when you've been lonely as long as I have, you start to do things you'd never imagine yourself doing. It's stupid, I know that now. But back then, I was desperate. Desperation makes you blind. Desperation makes you believe in magic. It started after another night of scrolling through social media, watching happy couples post pictures of vacations, proposals, date nights, all the stuff I'd never had. My heart felt like it was sinking in quicksand. I'd just gotten ghosted by yet another guy I'd thought was different. He'd seemed so sweet, texting me every morning like I mattered. Then, just like the rest of them, he vanished. No explanation, no goodbye. That's when I found it. I wasn't even searching for it. I'd been doom-scrolling witchcraft forums for ways to heal heartbreak, and there it was. A thread titled, "Make Them See You, the Binding of Hearts." Most of the comments were jokes or memes, but one reply caught my eye. It had a photo of an old crumbling page that looked like it was ripped out of a grimoire. It had strange scrawled handwriting and symbols I didn't recognize. But the instructions were clear. Burn a lock of your own hair. Burn an item belonging to the one you desire. Whisper their name 3 times as the smoke rises. At the bottom it read, "Love as strong as the flame. Bound forever." I'd seen love spells online before, but this one felt real. Maybe it was how old it looked, like it had been passed down through centuries. It felt different. I'm not stupid. I'm not that gullible. But I'd reached a point where I'd try anything. I'd already been making wishes at 11:11 and blowing on dandelions like a child. This didn't seem that much crazier, so I did it. I'd met Derek at work a few months back. We'd only had a few conversations in the break room, but I'd felt a spark. Or maybe I'd imagined it. Either way, I'd kept a receipt he'd left behind at his desk. I'd meant to toss it, but for some reason, I'd held on to it. It felt like fate now. That night, I sat on my bedroom floor with a candle in front of me. I snipped a small lock of my hair and placed it beside the crumpled receipt. My heart was racing, my hands shaky, like I was doing something forbidden. I lit the match and held it to the edge of the receipt. The paper curled, blackening as flames ate through it. I tossed in the hair, and the smell was awful. Burning hair always is. I'll never forget the feeling that came over me as I whispered his name 3 times. It wasn't power or magic. It was something colder, heavier, like the air had thickened around me. I'd never felt so certain that something had shifted. The next day, Derek texted me, out of nowhere. "Hey, I've been thinking about you. Want to grab dinner?" I stared at my phone, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd faint. This was it. It had worked. The spell had actually worked. I'd never felt so giddy in my life. We went to dinner, and it was perfect. He was attentive, sweet, looking at me like I was the only person in the room. We talked until the restaurant closed. It felt like a dream. But dreams don't last. The texts didn't stop. Not like before when he'd ghosted. No, these didn't stop at all. Every hour my phone buzzed. If I didn't answer right away, he'd send another, then another. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? I'm coming over." At first I thought he was being cute. Love drunk maybe. But it wasn't cute at 3 a.m. when I woke up to the sound of knocking at my door. I peered through the peephole and my heart stopped. Derek was standing there barefoot, his face pale as wax. He wasn't looking at the door. He was looking up at the peephole, like he knew I was watching. His lips moved, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. I'm not ashamed to say I didn't open the door. I backed away, heart racing, and texted him, "What are you doing here? It's 3 a.m. He didn't answer, but I could hear him. I'll never forget it. His voice soft and hoarse, whispering the words I'd said during the spell, word for word. My heart dropped into my stomach. The next day I called him. No answer. I blocked his number, but it didn't matter. He'd show up outside my house, just sitting on the porch, grinning. His eyes were wrong. They were too dark, like charcoal smudges in his sockets. They didn't blink. I tried to tell myself he'd moved on. A week passed with no sign of him. I started to believe it was over. I even started sleeping again. Then one night I woke up to the sound of him tapping on my bedroom window. Second floor, no ledge, no way for him to be there. But he was. I called the police. By the time they arrived, he was gone. They didn't believe me. A week later, he came back. This time he didn't knock. He was inside. I woke up and saw him standing in the corner of my room, his head tilted at an odd angle, eyes wide and unblinking. I was too frozen to scream. "Forever," he said, smiling. "If not one way, then another." Before I could move, he pulled a jagged shard of glass from his pocket and dragged it across his throat. The sound was wet and sharp. Blood sprayed against the wall like someone had thrown paint. I scrambled back, screaming, hands over my face. He crumpled to the ground like a puppet with its strings cut, his eyes still on me. His lips moved one last time, and I'm sure he said, "Forever." The police ruled it a mental health crisis, a tragic case of self-harm. They said I'd done all I could, but I knew better. I knew this was on me. The smell of burnt hair still lingers in my nightmares, and every time I close my eyes, I see him standing in that corner, head tilted, eyes burnt black. I've moved 3 times. It doesn't matter. Some nights I wake up gasping, certain I'd felt hands on my throat, certain I'd seen him watching me from the corner of my room, smiling like it's all a joke. Story 3. I've never been one to believe in the supernatural. Ghosts, demons, witches, all just stories people tell themselves to make life feel more mysterious than it is. I'm a journalist, and my job is to cut through the fog, expose the truth. So when I got assigned to investigate modern witchcraft for a feature article, I was ready to expose it as yet another New Age scam. The coven I found called themselves the Circle of Ash. Their leader, a woman named Alara, looked every bit the part. Long, flowing black dress, silver jewelry that jingled when she moved, and eyes that seemed too sharp for someone who smiled so much. She welcomed me with open arms, as if she'd been expecting me. "All are welcome here," she'd said, her gaze lingering on me just a second too long. The first few gatherings were exactly what I'd expected. A lot of chanting, herbs burning in small clay bowls, and people swaying with their eyes closed like they were feeling some cosmic current. I'd seen more theatricality at a high school play. I took notes on it all, recording every ridiculous detail. They talked about energy shifts and shadow work, but it was all vague enough to mean nothing. The people there, they weren't dangerous, just lonely. Then came the night of the protection ritual. Alara gathered us in a circle around a fire pit. The flames flickered high, casting long, twisting shadows that danced over the faces of the coven. She carried a clay bowl filled with ash from the fire, and moved from person to person, marking each of their forearms with a symbol, 3 intersecting lines with a small circle in the middle. The witch's eye, she called it, a mark of protection from what sees beyond the veil. When she got to me, I nearly laughed. "Oh, come on, this symbol will protect us?" I asked, holding out my arm with mock seriousness. "Skepticism is a form of fear," she replied, her smile never faltering. She dipped her fingers into the ash and pressed the mark onto my skin, her touch warm and firm. But even the fearful deserve protection. I didn't think twice about it. The ash smudged easily, and I wiped most of it off on my jeans the moment she walked away. Just another prop for the act. That night I went home and started drafting my article. The Modern Witch, Smoke, Mirrors, and Marketing was the working title. I'd gotten halfway through a paragraph about pseudo-spiritual branding when I saw it. A flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. I turned, but nothing was there, just the glow of my desk lamp against the wall. I shook it off. People see things in their peripheral vision all the time, but it happened again and again. A flash of something, a shape, maybe, just out of sight. I'd twist around fast, expecting to catch it, but it was always gone before I could. My heart started to race, and I told myself I'd been staring at the screen too long. Eye strain. I'd write it into the article. The power of suggestion, I'd call it. The next morning I woke up to find the mark on my arm. Not a smudge of ash, not the faint trace of where she'd touched me. No, it was there, dark and sharp, like it had been inked into my skin overnight. I rubbed at it, but it didn't fade. I scrubbed with soap, even scratched at it with my nails until my skin was raw, but it wouldn't come off. "What the hell?" I muttered, staring at it in the bathroom mirror. It looked like a bruise now, the skin around it tender and red from all the scrubbing. I'd have to see a dermatologist, I figured. That's when I noticed it. Her. She was behind me. Not clearly, not in focus, but there. A hunched figure in the foggy reflection of the bathroom mirror, just barely outside the frame of my vision. Long, knotted hair hanging in tangled ropes. Her face was a blur of shadow and pale skin. But I saw enough to know one thing. Her eyes weren't eyes at all, just 2 hollow, empty sockets. I spun around so fast I knocked the soap dispenser off the counter. Nothing was there. I stood in the bathroom for a long time, every muscle in my body tensed. I'd seen her. I knew I'd seen her. But I'm a rational man. I've reported on mass hysteria, on the way panic feeds into the mind's capacity to misinterpret simple things. But I'd never felt it myself. Not like this. I didn't sleep that night. The flashes of movement at the edge of my vision didn't stop. No matter how fast I turned, she'd always slip away just a second too soon. Every reflection, a window, the blank screen of my laptop, even the faint reflection in a cup of coffee, held that faint shape in the distance, always watching. I'd had enough. I went to the bathroom and grabbed a razor blade. I'd cut the mark off if I had to. I'd seen it in movies, people digging out splinters or infected wounds. But as soon as I pressed the blade to my skin, a searing pain shot through my arm. Not from the blade, no, it came from inside the mark itself. It burned like someone had pressed a live coal into my skin. I dropped the razor and fell to the floor, clutching my arm, eyes clenched shut. When I opened them, she was there, closer this time. Her hands rested on my shoulders, long, thin fingers with nails like cracked, yellowed glass. Her head tilted forward, her hollow sockets so close to my face, I could see the darkness inside them, stretching on forever. Her mouth stretched into a grin so wide it could have split her head in two. I screamed. I don't remember getting off the floor, but I must have. I'm not sure when I ran, but I'm here now. I'm in my car, parked in a 24-hour diner lot, lights on, doors locked. Every reflective surface inside is covered with towels and newspaper. I've been sitting here for hours staring at my arm. The mark is darker than before. I've tried calling people, friends, co-workers, even the coven, but no one's answering. I searched for the Circle of Ash online. Nothing. No website, no social media pages. My texts to Alara show as undelivered. No one's ever heard of them. It's like they never existed, but she's still here. I'm not sure if I'll ever be alone again. I'm afraid to sleep. I'm afraid of mirrors, afraid of screens, afraid of my own reflection. I know she's waiting. I can feel her hands on my shoulders. Story 4. I never should have gone that night. I tell myself that every day, like it'll somehow undo everything. But I did go. We all did. Me, Jake, Sarah, and a couple of others who were just looking for a thrill. We thought it would be one of those stupid haunted house adventures we'd laugh about later. We drink cheap soda, tell each other ghost stories, and leave before midnight. But that's not what happened. The house wasn't just old, it was wrong. It felt like it had been waiting for us. Peeling wallpaper curled like it was trying to whisper secrets. The air smelled damp, heavy, like a wet basement that's never seen light. The boards creaked under our feet, every sound too sharp, too loud. Looking back, I'm sure it was trying to warn us. Jake had the Ouija board stuffed in his backpack. He'd borrowed it from his older brother, swearing he'd put it back before anyone noticed. We gathered in the middle of what might have been a living room once. Dust danced in the beam of a flashlight, swirling like little ghosts of its own. We sat in a circle, knees knocking against each other, the board between us. I'd never actually used one before, not for real. I'd seen them in movies, seen kids online pretending to get haunted for clicks and likes. It's not supposed to work. Everyone knows that. It's just the push and pull of nervous hands, right? That's what I told myself. Jake went first. Is anyone here with us? We all had our fingers on the planchette, barely touching, just like the rules said. It didn't move right away. I felt a flicker of relief, thinking, see? It's all fake. Then it moved. Slow. Deliberate. My first thought was that Jake was doing it, trying to freak us out. But he wasn't smiling. Nobody was. The planchette slid to N, then to A, then M, and finally E. Name, I thought. It's asking for a name? Jake glanced around at us, waiting for one of us to laugh or admit we'd done it. Nobody did. My heart started to pound, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't the only one. Then someone, I think it was Sarah, asked, "Okay, tell us your name." I'd give anything to go back and stop her from saying that. The planchette started moving faster. Y-O-U-R-S. It's spelling yours, I realized, but it didn't make sense. None of us understood it right away. Jake made a face like, "Real funny, guys," but nobody's hands left the planchette. Nobody was laughing. Yours, I thought again. And that's when Jake spoke up. "Well, I'm Jake," he said, casual and careless, like it'd prove we weren't scared. But as soon as he said it, the planchette jerked hard, like it had been waiting for him. It spelled out J-A-K-E, one sharp movement after another. It felt angry. We all froze. I'll never forget Sarah's voice next. She'd been quiet until then, probably as freaked out as I was. But she laughed like she was forcing it and said, "Well, I'm Sarah." She said it like it'd break the tension, like naming yourself in front of it would somehow take away its power. I'll never understand why she did it. The board's response was instant, S-A-R-A-H. This time, it didn't feel slow. It felt like it was grabbing her name, pulling it in. My hands were sweating now. I pulled my fingers away from the planchette, but Jake's hands stayed on. So did Sarah's. "Stop," I muttered. "End it. Say goodbye. End it now." My voice cracked. I'd never been so serious in my life. But Jake just stared at me, his face pale. His lips moved, and I'll never forget what he said. "It's still moving." And it was. Nobody was touching it, but it kept sliding across the board on its own. It spelled out Y-O-U-K-N-O-W-M-I-N-E. I'm not ashamed to admit I ran. I didn't wait for them. I'm not proud of it, but my legs were faster than my brain, and I bolted for the door. I'd like to say I'd gone to get help, but the truth is, I just wanted to be away. I glanced back only once. There was something in the doorway. It wasn't one of them. It was too tall, its shape too jagged, like a coat rack with too many arms. It didn't follow me, but it watched. I felt it watching all the way home. Jake's parents called the next day. They'd already contacted the police. Jake never came home that night. He'd vanished. The house we'd been in was searched, but there was no sign of him. I knew where he was. I knew before they even called. The day after, Sarah's parents called too. Same story. Gone. No signs of struggle. No one saw her leave. Just gone. Her phone was found on her bed, still playing her sleep sounds app. But she was gone. The house was boarded up after that. No one's allowed in, but I've been back. I've gone twice. I've never gone inside. I'm not that stupid, but I've seen it. Their names, scratched into the wall inside. Jake, Sarah, big jagged letters like claw marks. My name's not there. Not yet. I'm the only one left. I've tried to be normal, to move on. I've changed my phone number twice. I've moved to a different town. It's been a year, but every time I'm alone, I'm afraid I'll hear it again. The soft scrape of the planchette sliding across wood, the sound of my name being pulled from the air, letter by letter. Some nights I hear knocking. 3 knocks. Always 3. Not on the door. It's never the door. It's the wall next to my bed. I've stopped checking to see if anyone's there. It's better not to know. I'm afraid to sleep. I'm afraid that if I do, I'll wake up and see my name scratched into the wall. If I'm next, I don't want to see it coming. Story 5. I didn't think much of it at first. The Shadow Work Collective seemed like just another self-help group on social media. I'd seen so many of them. Heal your inner child, manifest your best life, all that stuff. But something about this one felt different. The posts weren't filled with cliché affirmations or pastel-colored quotes. They were raw, blunt, almost brutal in their honesty. Face your shadow, one post said. You can't run from it forever. That one stuck with me. I'd been running from a lot. Bad relationships, old mistakes, the kind of memories that claw their way into your head when you're lying in bed at 3 a.m. I figured, why not? Shadow work sounded deep, but it also sounded like something I needed. I joined the private group. There was no application process, just a single question. Are you ready to see yourself? I clicked yes without thinking. The admin went by the name Mara, no profile picture, just an all-black icon. She welcomed me with a message almost immediately. Welcome, sister. Remember, the deeper you go, the darker it gets, but you'll come out stronger on the other side. The group was intense. No fluff, no sugarcoating. People shared their deepest, ugliest truths. Failed marriages, fears of being unwanted, regrets so heavy you could almost feel them through the screen. Everyone supported each other, but there was no coddling. The responses were always something like, sit with that feeling, let it burn through you. I posted a few times testing the waters. I talked about my ex, how he'd broken me down piece by piece with words that still echoed in my mind. You're too much, he'd say. You drain people. I thought I'd moved past it, but it lived in me like a parasite. That's when Mara messaged me privately. Write a letter to her, to the shadow version of you. Tell her everything. Blame her, forgive her, whatever feels right. Then burn it. No shortcuts. Burn every word. I should have felt weird about it. Who asks you to burn letters to yourself? But by that point, I was so tired of carrying it all around. I figured maybe this would help me feel lighter. So I did it. I sat down that night and wrote it all out. Every insecurity, every fear, every nasty thought I'd ever had about myself. I blamed her, the shadow me, for being weak, for being pathetic, for letting people hurt me. I wrote until my hand cramped, and when I was done, I folded it up, took it to the kitchen sink, and lit it with a match. It burned fast. The edges curled, turning black and orange before crumbling to ash. I watched every word go up in smoke. It felt good, until I went to bed. I woke up around 2 a.m. The room felt wrong, like the air was heavier somehow. My eyes were still adjusting to the dark, but I knew something was there, at the foot of my bed, a shape. I thought it was just my eyes playing tricks on me. You know how you see weird shadows in the dark if you stare too long? But this was different. This shape didn't flicker, it didn't waver, it stayed. I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight. Nothing was there, just my closet, half open like it always was. I told myself I was being stupid. Too much shadow work, too much thinking about her. I rolled over, pulled the blanket up and tried to sleep, but I swear I heard it then. A faint sound, breathing. The next day I told myself it was all in my head. Sleep deprivation, stress, whatever. But things got worse. I started noticing it in reflections. It started small, just a flicker in the corner of my phone screen. Then I saw it in the window while I was washing dishes. Not behind me, but in the window, staring back at me. Her face, my face, but wrong. Her eyes were hollow, empty pits that felt like they could pull me in if I stared too long. And her smile, it was too wide, stretching in a way human faces aren't supposed to stretch. I dropped the plate I was washing. It shattered in the sink. When I looked back, she was gone. I tried to tell the group, but they acted like it was normal. That's your shadow. She's coming closer. Don't run from her. This means it's working. She's ready to be embraced. I didn't feel like embracing anything. I tried to message Mara, but she only sent one reply. If it shows its face, it's too late. Too late for what? I asked, but she didn't respond. I tried calling her out in the group chat, but the message never went through. I checked her profile. It was gone. No trace of Mara, no trace of the group either, like it had never existed. I tried to tell one of my friends about it. She said, "You've been on the internet too much. Those self-help cults are everywhere." I laughed it off, but my chest felt tight. I searched for a shadow work collective and Mara shadow group for hours. Nothing. No forum posts, no archive pages, no screenshots. It was like the group had been wiped from the internet entirely. I even checked my email history. No invites, no confirmation emails, nothing. It was like it had never been there. But she was still here. She hadn't disappeared. I stopped looking at mirrors, stopped checking my reflection in windows. But that's hard to do when you live in a world made of glass screens. Every time I opened my phone, there'd be a flash of her face, just for a second. Hollow eyes, that horrible grin. I moved, packed my stuff, and left town. New apartment, no mirrors, no reflective surfaces. I thought maybe that would be enough. For a while it was, but sometimes I'd wake up at night and feel her there. Not see her, just feel her, like someone was staring at me so hard it left a heat on my skin. One night I woke up gasping for air. My throat felt tight, like a hand had been wrapped around it. I sat up, coughing, touching my neck to make sure I wasn't dreaming. I swore I heard something shuffle away, like feet on carpet. But I was alone. I know I was alone. I've moved twice since then. Same story every time. I can't find the group. No one remembers it. It's like I made it up, but I know I didn't. Sometimes I convince myself I'm crazy, that it's all in my head. But then I'll see her, just for a second, in the black screen of my phone when it dies. She's still there, her eyes hollow, her grin too wide, closer than before. I sleep with the lights on now, but it doesn't help. Light doesn't stop her. She's patient. She waits. She watches. She's always watching. And every now and then, I wake up with that choking feeling again, my hands gripping at my neck, my nails digging into my skin. But I'm not doing it. I'm not. At least I don't think I am. Thanks for watching. Don't leave before leaving a like to this video. Also hit the subscribe button to support my work. And as always, have a horrific nightmare, my dear.